Bonjour, Tammy Baisley here from French Speak. Comment ça va? In this video, I want to talk to you about the three things that are stopping you from refreshing your French. So this is for people who studied French, perhaps at school, perhaps for a couple of years, perhaps for the whole of high school, and they want to get back into their French now, and they're not quite sure how. These are three things that are stopping you and how to overcome them. Number one, it's too hard. French language was too hard. How can I possibly get back into it now? I've forgotten everything. I want you to stop and think of how could you make it easy? How could it be easy? Because when you learn French for school purposes, for the purpose of exams, the teacher's going to set you a speaking exam, a writing exam, grammar, vocab list. All of that had a specific purpose, and that was to measure you against the way the academic world works, which is very different to your goal now as an adult. So have a look at the language you use around it's too hard and try and reframe it with, I'm making the decision now to learn French as an adult. I'm going to figure out a way to make it fun and easy. And not easy because learning a language is not easy, but instead of doing things in a default mode of having to learn all the gender of the words and all the right spelling and accents of words and doing rote learning of grammar points and looking at all the exceptions of certain rules, make sure you make it so that you only learn what you want to learn. So that's my tip for if you think it's too hard, is to make sure you keep it fun. And if you're a bit of a social butterfly, go and learn with other people. You don't have to do this alone. You can join groups online, you can join groups in your neighborhood, and make sure that you've got that social interaction, because being able to sit beside another learner who's also putting themselves out of their comfort zone feels really good. It's really nice to have the support of other people. If you're just way too shy to speak French with other people in the room, then consider having a private tutor, because they will work with you to help you feel comfortable and bring you to a level where you will be able to speak with other people. So have a think of what's going to work well for you and what's going to make it fun. It's not one size fits all. We can all get to a really good level, but you've got to pick your own path, and you can definitely do that. So make sure you keep it fun. And if you have, this is number two, things that's stopping you from refreshing your French, is if you think it's too time consuming. So you're thinking, well, when I was at school, I used to do 3, perhaps 4 hours of French in class, and then I'd have to do maybe 1 or 2 hours on top of that as homework. And that's when I'm not preparing for exams. That's just to keep up with the homework. I don't have 6 hours a week up my sleeve now to do French. Well, it doesn't have to be as intensive. You were at the time learning with maybe 10, 20, 30 other students in one classroom, and therefore the teacher had to keep up with the pace of the class. What you can do on your own with targeted goals, you can do in so much shorter a time span as what you used to do in the classroom setting. So again, private lessons, something individualized to fill in the gaps, because there might be some things from high school that you remember really well, some things that you don't remember well at all. Being able to have a teacher who can quickly see where the gaps are, which things need learning as opposed to revising, as opposed to perfecting. The teacher will instinctively know what that is for you and for your French, and will be able to assess and organize lessons around that. If you try and do it yourself, you might end up going back too far back and trying to relearn everything from scratch. And therefore, perhaps in 6 months or 12 months, you'll still feel like you're still in the learning. You haven't been able to catch up with your level and lose your motivation. So If you feel that it's too time consuming, look at some really strategic ways of approaching your French. Small little bits of French daily will be so much better than a 2-hour session at the weekend. I even recommend 15 minutes to my students. If you can do 15 minutes, it just keeps your brain open to French every day. And I like to think of the brain has a box for the French language and it's got a lid. And by dipping into it every day, we're having to remove the lid, and therefore the French is quicker to come back out. Whereas if you only use it once a week, you are going to put the lid back on it, and then there's a whole rigmarole that goes with, where's that box again? Opening the lid and finding the things inside, because you forget where everything is. If you do it daily, you pretty much need to just leave that lid open, and you quickly get to learn where everything is, and therefore when you think of what you need to say or recognize a word when you're reading, it's all going to come back much quicker. So the second tip for if it's too time consuming is to keep and to not lose motivation, is to keep remembering why you decided to do it. So if you have a notepad for your French lessons, then make sure that on the inside you have a little page where you list all the reasons why you want to learn French and what you want to be able to do, and maybe a third page on how you'll feel once you've achieved those. And then use the rest to take notes and do some exercises. And every time you don't really feel like it, just being able to refer back to those front pages will really help your French. Number 3, numéro 3, is it's too slow. So perhaps you have tried to refresh your French, but you're still only able to understand a tiny bit or be able to express a tiny bit, and you're meeting this frustration of, but I can only say this much and I want to say this much, or I feel like a toddler when I speak in French, and it's not a comfortable feeling. So my tip for those people is to track, what are you doing? What are you spending time on? If your goal is to be able to have a conversation, and the only way you've been practicing your French for a month is by reading Harry Potter in French, that's not going to help you necessarily with your speaking. You need to do the thing that is the goal, that is going to match the goal you're doing. So if you want to be able to read Sartre and poetry and philosophy books and French plays, then keep doing lots of reading. That's going to get you there, and check your vocabulary and keep going. But if your goal is to have a conversation in French, then it's the speaking muscle that you need to work out. So if you're training for a marathon, lifting weights is kind of a secondary thing, but going for regular runs and working on that is the primary goal. So we're going to keep track of how much time you're spending on things, what at the start of the study session, what you were planning on spending the session on, how long, so put a timer on, how long did you spend, and what did you actually achieve at the end. And by keeping that track, you're going to stay really motivated and really on purpose, and set little goals. So what do I want to do, be able to do at the end of this week, at the end of this fortnight, at the end of this month maximum, and track the time you're spending and what you're doing for that, and make sure that it's aligned with your goal. So that went for a lot longer than I wanted it to. So it was supposed to be a super short video. Hopefully you got lots of value from it. And please let me know below where you're at, if this resonated for you, and if I can help you any further, let me know. Au revoir mes amis. Merci.